Okay. It says it's working. What's that? Okay. So we're still handling in Mishnah 11 the tail end of the issue of when you're looking after someone else's stuff. That's really what chapter 3 has been all about. You've got a basic remembering, got those neurons firing again. So let's go ahead and take a look at Mishnah 11 at the end of chapter 3. Okay, everyone set?
If a man left coins with a money changer.
Okay, so immediately, let's see how well you're thinking like a Mishnah Jew. Why are we going to be talking about, we've been talking about leaving coins with other people or leaving stuff with other people. What immediately is going to be some of the issues that are going to come up with leaving coins with a money changer?
You cannot identify them.
Exactly, right? This is not my sheep that has the one black foot. Right? This is a coin, and in particular, you're leaving it with someone who has a lot of coins. So you can't even just say, the coins, so my coins will always be clearly mine. So leaving them in the possession of a person who has a lot of the same stuff, that's the category we're dealing with. Okay, good. You're all thinking right.
If the coins were tied up in a bag, the money changer may not use them.
Okay, right? Remember, like we were talking about sticking stuff in your garage? Well, now you've got a bag, a pouch full of coins. You've left them with the money changer. The money changer cannot open the bag and use the coins and replace them with other coins, even though the same amount would be there in the end. Physically use the coin if they were tied up in that manner.
It's consistent with the previous ideas.
Exactly right. It's very consistent. It's set. It has a place. It's physically intact. It needs to remain physically intact.
Therefore, if that bag of coins were lost, the money changer is not responsible.
Right. Again, we're talking about avoiding gross negligence here. If he's walking down the street and, playing catch with the bag of money, or, telling people, I think we got another person at the door. Class. Whose turn is it to go? Okay. Don't worry, I'll hold off on the explanation.
Okay.
Oh, we're recording, so we got to have a bit of a show, right? I need a little intermission sign. Please wait while the door is opened. We're just lucky that we have a...
Do you post these?
Oh, they're posted automatically. They're actually being recorded live. So if anybody was sitting at their computer right now, they could be watching. We had 4 at lunchtime today.
Yes.
We had 4 people watching at lunchtime.
I didn't realize when I'm home I could watch it live. I
Yes.
waited until the evening so that I could.
Well, I mean, watch it when it's convenient, but you can technically watch it live.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my.
All right, now we're working. And Natan, maybe you could grab the other packet there to pass it down. Or Laura can do it. Great. Okay, so if they're lost, they're not responsible because it was intact, it was set just like that thing that was left in my garage. Therefore, it isn't my responsibility.
But if the coins were loose, the money changer may use them. Therefore, if they get lost, he is responsible.
Right, so if I say, look after my $50, I'm telling you to look after the value, not the material dollars themselves. And therefore, okay, I'll give you back $50 when you return. Use your $50. I'm not going to worry about which dollar bill is yours and which dollar bill is mine. So someone else? Yeah, I think we got one more.
Oh my gosh.
Do I have enough copies? Yeah.
There's another one here.
Oh, there's another one there?
Yeah.
Good. Because it's a long Masechet, so I didn't make as many copies, but or if that's Sanhedrin.
Yeah, this is something else.
Is that?
Because 11 is not the same 11.
No, this is a different 11. Just different chapter.
Right.
Cow, lending it, broken. There we are.
Oh, very good.
Okay. Oh, there you go.
Thank you.
Just go to the right page. All right, that's it. We can't have any more students because we ran out of photocopies. No one else can learn. Oh, I suppose. It's a good thing you bring your own, Natan.
Yes.
We'd be in trouble.
Also, yeah, come on, use yours. That's why you pay so much money. Come on.
Okay,
All right.
so part two, on the other hand, remember this was the issue with a money changer where it was obviously going to be intermingled with his things. However,
If a man left coins with a householder, whether the coins were loose or tied up in a bag, the householder may not use them.
it doesn't matter. Someone says, "Could you watch my $50 for me?" You take his $50, you put it in your sock drawer, and you don't touch it. Because you're not a person who deals with cash. You're not a person who deals with money. You just store the physical item, not the value of the item, and you're done.
Coins were lost. He is not responsible.
Okay? Therefore, it's just like as if he walked into your garage and said, "Could you please put this on the shelf?" And you say, "Sure," and you put it on the shelf. Your duty is now done. As long as you're not using it, and as long as you're not grossly negligent, you're fine.
It sounds kind of strange because if you gave me your coins to hold and I put it in my dresser drawer, my sock drawer, and I left them there, when I got back, you're right, I haven't used them in case if somebody else came in and stole them, I would not be responsible.
Exactly.
That's okay, that does make sense. Okay, number three.
Number three is a little variation.
A shopkeeper is like a householder, according to Rabbi Meir. And Rabbi Judah says a shopkeeper is like a money changer.
All right, so the argument there is, all right, so you got somebody whose job is money, and you got somebody whose job is not money, right? Money changer and householder. A shopkeeper, his job involves money, but it's not money that's his job. So which category does he fall into? And I have to go back and check the Gemara, and I have to apologize, I did not before. But generally speaking, whenever Rabbi Meir comes as a single opinion, we don't follow him, we follow the other Tana, so which means that it is likely that Rabbi Yehuda is the winner in this. That a shopkeeper should be treated more like a money changer. And you have a commentary there, because I noticed our USCJ commentary doesn't have it. And seeing whether or not they mention, what the halacha follows. I just know the general rule of thumb is that Rabbi Meir, as a single opinion, is usually not followed.
What did you do to warrant that judgment?
He was too smart. So most of the Mishnah that's written without attribution, but whenever his name is attached to a teaching, then we usually don't follow him because his reasons were so sublime that the rest of us couldn't understand them. And so, by definition, if you can't understand why he's right, he can't be right. They don't mention either? Okay, so we'll let it stand. Okay, Mishnah 12 as we draw to a close.
And
that's the top there, yes.
If a man makes personal use of a deposit, Beit Shammai holds that he is at a disadvantage whether the value rises or falls.
Okay, so the case where you're not using it with permission, right? You're using it anyway. And the question then becomes, okay, so I used your $50 and whatever I did has now decreased in values under the $50 worth. Do I have to give you back whatever I used it for at that decreased value, or do I have to replenish it back to the full 50? That's the question here. Right? Whether that goes up or down. If I use it to buy something and now that something is worth more than $50, do I have to only give you 50, or do I give you the new thing even though it's worth more? And now you've made money even though I was hoping to make money off of this. Is that situation sort of clear?
The situation is clear, but what is Beit Shammai saying?
That you're at a disadvantage. Doesn't matter whether it goes
Who's
up.
at a disadvantage? The person who gave you the money, or you who used it poorly? Which one of us is a disadvantage?
No, the guardian.
The guardian is a disadvantage.
The guardian is at a disadvantage, right? So meaning that the person who used the money, guardian, has to pay the higher of the amount, either the original 50 or the new upgraded amount, because you shouldn't have been touching my stuff.
So if you gave me $50 to watch,
right,
and I bought a share of stock,
yes,
which became $75,
you have to give me the $75. On the other hand, if you bought a share of stock that became $25, don't touch my stuff.
Okay.
Right? I mean, why should you be allowed to profit while misusing my stuff? any chance for you to profit in that way. Beit Hillel has a slightly different opinion.
Beit Hillel says he must restore the deposit at its value at the time at which he put it to use.
All right, so Beit Hillel goes back to the answer of saying, no, for doing this, by doing anything else, you simply have to make sure that you give back what was the original amount, which means that you are protected, that if someone uses your stuff and the price goes down, stock is a good example,
Right.
you still have to give back the original 50. But on the other hand, no? Is that not how you're reading, or you're surprised?
Yeah, I don't agree with it. Go ahead.
Right,
I
but on the
agree.
other hand, if I buy with your stock and it goes up to 75, I give you back your 50 and I pocket the 25 change.
I agree completely with it. I think that's very logical.
No, it's,
I didn't ask you to buy stock for me. I just asked you to hold my money. What
Correct.
you're doing on the side, why should I be punished?
I give it to you and you're taking it and it says personal use. When I come back to get it, I expect the current market value. I don't want the value that it was back then.
But the point is, I've converted it into something that wasn't what I was originally given. If I gave you stock to look after, that's a different issue.
Right.
But I'm giving you something that has a fixed value, and you've now converted it into something whose value has risen or fallen.
Like I gave you a $50 bill.
Right.
Cash $50. I want my $50 back. What you've done with it on the side that I don't even know about, if you lost money with my $50, that's your problem. But then on the other hand, if you made money with my $50, you're entitled to keep it because you were smart enough to do it. Just give me back my 50. Why should I benefit from what you did?
Right.
If I give you a goat and then there's a drought.
Right.
Well, and then some wealthy goat herder from the next county.
The goat
comes
collector.
in, and the price of goats crashes,
Right.
and I come back from my trip. I want my goat. I don't want
The reduced value.
right.
But that's what Akiva is saying, right? I mean, sorry, Hillel is saying, right? Akiva is going to be the different one, right? So we haven't quite got to Akiva yet,
Okay.
right? So Hillel is saying, goat is a goat. That whether the price has gone up or the price has gone down, what I need is the goat,
Yes.
and that's all I need back. What Shammai said was, if the price goes up, I get the benefit too. That even though in your care the price has increased through no fault of yours or mine, I get to enjoy the fruits of that rise from my object in your care, and you can't profit in some way. Now, goats are a little tricky, I guess. You could say you sheared the goat because it had a bumper crop of hair and such. I'm trying to imagine how a goat could rise in value that could be collected, as opposed to just it's a goat. But if you had some bonus thing off the goat, then you would still get that benefit. That was Beit Shammai's opinion. Rabbi Akiva is going to introduce a third opinion.
And Rabbi Akiva says he must restore the deposit at its value at the time at which it is claimed.
No, I understand, sorry, Steve, issue, because if you follow every Mishnah that we read until now for this
For this
chapter,
part, yeah.
okay, the idea, the logic behind was according to Shammai. All the time, every example that when someone lost money, or
Right.
someone found money, or everything, or someone give you something to keep,
Right.
every time was according to the logic, okay, according to Shammai. What Hillel and Akiva are saying is something new, totally new, that if you keep the line of the previous discussion.
So you're saying the idea being that no matter what, the person who used it is at the penalty,
Correct.
is consistent with the other teachings in
Or the previous the Masechet.
of illegitimate use. I guess I can say that, but I mean that would certainly be an agreement. But the idea here is not just Shammai is basically doing is penalizing the person for using it, and what Akiva and Shammai or Hillel are trying to do. Well, Beit Hillel is trying to do is figure out what is fair to the owner, and without interest of whether there has to be a penalty for the illegitimate use. So that does sort of keep in, because it's not talking about what is the actual value, it's talking about what is appropriate as a penalty for use, right? What is the risk that is assumed by the user that he's going to be penalized for this kind of behavior? Whereas Beit Hillel and Rabbi Akiva, they don't care about punishing the person who used it. They just want to make sure that the person who gets their goat, their watch in the USEJ translation, or the stock, that they get back what's fair for them. I think it's a little more subtle than saying that it's about just the rights of the owner, because Shammai adds in this layer of almost punishing the user, the guardian.
Because that was my understanding from all the previous examples that we studied, that really actually kind of punishment the user, because it's not your money, it's in your stuff. So if you use it, it's illegal. So yes,
it's not punished. It's not a punishment. It's a responsibility. If you use it when you shouldn't, you're on the hook. If you leave it alone when you should, you're off the hook. When we had our graph of the garage storage situation, or just as we said in the previous thing, you give me the $50, I put it in my sock drawer. If the house burns down, I'm not responsible for your $50. If I'm using your $50, now I'm responsible for it. I assume more obligation, I assume more responsibility as soon as I begin to use it. The question that's being done in Mishnah 12 is, yeah, but how much responsibility do you assume, right? And Beit Shammai's opinion is you're assuming a much greater level of responsibility in this level because of you're being punished, essentially, no matter what happens to the value. And Beit Hillel and Rabbi Akiva are coming in and saying, well, not exactly. You do have to be you're more responsible than if you just kept it in the drawer. But the responsibility ends at the value of the object when you deposited it, or the value when it claimed it. It doesn't. We don't worry about the value up or down. It's subtle, I think, because all of them agree that the illegitimate use means the guardian is responsible for the item now. The question is just whether that responsibility is going to be punitive, or whether that responsibility is going to be just fair. And I think that's why they're arguing. But they all agree on that basic principle of, you touch my stuff, you're much more responsible for it than if you just left it in the drawer. All right, part 2.
One who expresses his intention to use a deposit for personal use. Beit Shammai says he is liable for any subsequent damage to the deposit as if he had already made use of it.
All right, so Beit Shammai is strict, as we see from Beit Shammai in many places, which is if you say, tomorrow I'm going to go use his car, because my neighbor didn't lend me his car. My neighbor left the car with me for safekeeping, and tomorrow I'm going to go drive it because it's convertible and it's a beautiful day. The car, before you've even gotten in it to use it, you're already responsible, says Beit Shammai. Don't go around blabbing about using people's stuff. And Beit Hillel?
Beit Hillel says he is not liable until he actually uses it, because in Exodus it says, if he had not put his hand onto his neighbor's property.
Right? So you can't, if you haven't actually touched it, you haven't actually used it, you're not responsible for it. You still shouldn't be thinking about using people's stuff without their permission, but it begins with the use, not with the idea, not with the thought.
How is this so?
Right, so give me some examples.
1, if he tilted the jug and took a quarter log of wine and the jug was then broken, he only pays the quarter log. 2, if he lifted it and then took a quarter log and the jug was then broken, he pays for the whole jug. So if he just tilts it, he doesn't have to pay, but if he picks it up and it breaks, then he has to pay.
All right, so what in the world is the difference between tilting and lifting? We're going to get into in our next chapter, chapter 4, because this is about acquiring. And in Jewish law, you acquire stuff by lifting, by pulling, by moving them from their place. And that's what he's talking about here. So if you're just tilting it, you haven't actually taken it to be used yet. You're using-ish the item. It's kind of, riding the line of what it means to be using. You used the quarter log, the amount of wine, right? Because you've actually removed that from the jug, but you haven't used the rest of it because you didn't take possession of the rest of it. So someone else?
No,
I was going to say that's real late.
right, that's not- right.
That's real Jewish time.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if you've picked it up, you've now taken possession of the whole jug, and what you pour out of it doesn't make a difference. You're responsible for the whole thing. And if that doesn't make sense, good. Chapter 4 will hopefully make it a little bit clearer. It will. But it's going to flip on our heads the way we do purchases. Because there's a principle in Judaism that I guess we should probably, let me see if I can diagram. And we're going to do it with a box. And we're going to do it with cash. So we got Frank and Tom. We're going to need action arrows here. Frank and Tom are going to make a deal. Wants to buy the box. Frank wants the money for the box. In American systems, how does this normally work? All right, what do you do?
Someone.
What's that?
You meet someone.
They meet somewhere, right? We're in the middle of a Craigslist meeting. What? Do the exchange. How does it normally work? You're in a shop. You're at Walmart, right? You're at Sears. Are there still Sears?
Until Frank don't take the money, he doesn't give you
The box.
Right. So in the USA, the money goes first, and the box goes second. Right? The money buys the box. Right? That's the way it works. By you taking possession of my money, I now have ownership of the box. Judaism, it's opposite. Right? In the Jewish system, the item and possession of the item is what matters. Right? So when I take possession, not what I'm given, when I take possession, I don't know how to draw that. When Tom pulls the box to him, automatically obligates himself and the money to transfer to Frank. Right? It's his acquisition of the item that obligates the payment of the cash. Does that make sense? Okay, good, because we need to have that in mind, because God bless Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, the first Mishnah of chapter 4 assumes you already know this. And then it explains it in Mishnah 2. So, yeah, it's a little weird. But like I said before, Mishnah assumes you know every other part of Mishnah except the one piece you're looking at right now. So it really has high faith in you. But the idea of pulling the item as being the act of kinyan, the act of acquiring, you got to get that clear in our mind, because the item comes before the cash. For example, where you will see this still acted out in common Jewish practice is in weddings, when you have the stipulations of the ketubah. In order to show that the parties accept the terms of the ketubah, that the ketubah is acquired. Tradition originally by the wife, and then now because of the Lieberman clause, it also has to be acquired by the husband because he has to be bound by its stipulations as well. We'll talk about that some other time. What you will often see if the ketubah is large and framed and hard to just hand back to back is literally something like this. You'll take a handkerchief or other item, and if you accept the terms of the ketubah and you acquire it, and go ahead, you have to pull it from the hand. I can't drop it in her hand.
Oh, I have to do it actively.
You have to actively acquire it. You have to show physically that you are pulling this into your possession. It's yours, right? And if you didn't do that, it didn't belong to you, at least according to Jewish law. American law is a little different, obviously, but we're dealing with Mishnah, so that's what we're dealing with. Everyone got the basic framework here? Chapter 4, Mishnah 1.
Gold acquires silver, but silver does not acquire gold.
Okay. In this first Mishnah, we're trying to work out what is the box and what is the money. It doesn't sound like that, I know, but that's what we're dealing with. what's in the box and what's in the wallet. In the first one, gold is the product and silver is the cash. Why? Well, because silver was more commonly used for coins than gold. Gold was much rarer, and therefore you would buy gold with silver. You didn't buy silver with gold. No,
No.
right? Because gold coins were weird. You could buy silver with gold, and we'll get to how you do that in a second.
Yeah,
No, maybe.
because you can multiply the value and get more.
I know mathematically we can, but in terms of kinyan, in terms of the acquisition, move the product before you move the cash. And so that's what's being done here. You move the gold, and once I have taken your bar of gold, your gold ring, or your gold coins, I now have to give you the silver. Now, what happens if I give you the silver before you give me the gold? Or what happens if you take the silver before you give me the gold? Trick question. Nothing. Nothing's happened. Technically, we're going to talk about the non-technical side, but technically, if you go, actually, you know what, never mind. Here, have your silver back. And I'm going to keep my gold. That's okay. You didn't break a contract. You didn't break a deal. Technically, we're going to get to, like I said, the non-technical side in a minute. But once I have taken your gold, I can't just go, no, you know what, have your gold back. Once I've taken your gold, I now own it. And by extension, you own the silver that we've agreed to pay for it. It has to be by agreement. I can't just snatch your gold and say, here's a silver piece. And I take it, I can't renege without agreement by parties on both sides. Make sense? Right? Acquiring is acquiring. It's like in modern fancy purchases, or even in non-fancy purchases, I guess. Once you get that receipt, it's yours. Now, most stores have return policies and all of that, but imagine you're in some mom and pop shop and you buy something, some antique silver or whatever, and you get it and you hand them the cash and they put it in the cash register and they give you a receipt and you turn around and you go to leave and you go, actually on second thought, no. They are under no obligation to take that back from you and to give you a refund. You have acquired it. And now if you want to give it back, okay, fine, that's a new deal. And we can make a deal and you may come out equal or you may come out at a loss. But once it's acquired, it's your property, not theirs. And therefore, they don't have any obligation to take it back. Good. Next one.
Copper acquires silver, but silver does not acquire copper.
Once again, copper is the generic commodity, and silver still functions as cash.
But silver has more value than copper.
Correct, because it's not about the value. It's about which one is used for money as the default. Now, if you want to buy silver with copper, that's fine. You just have to agree with the person that we're going to sell 15 pieces of silver for 500 pieces of copper, but the copper still has to move first, or else the deal hasn't been finished. Once the copper moves, now the deal's done. Same way.
Bad coins acquire good coins.
Because again, bad coins are more likely to be a commodity that you're using for their base metal value rather than their coinage. And the good coins,
do not acquire bad coins.
Are, of course, that's what cash is by definition, right? And you need to know a little bit about the numismatic systems in the ancient world of how coins were stamped, and they could be clipped or reduced in value or remelted with bad alloys or falsely minted. Bad coins to mean. And some of them could be worn so smooth that it would be a little unclear what they were. Now you're dealing with bad coins.
An unminted coin acquires a minted coin.
Right, so that's like a blank coin. It wasn't struck properly, or somehow it doesn't have the image of the coin itself on it. Whereas minted, well, that's cash. And
movable property acquires coined money.
Right, so stuff, money. Right, that's your generic box, or my sofa, or something else that's, my sword or pot, the property, you're now obligated to pay. Right? Once you've taken the item from the shopkeeper, you now have possession of it, you have ownership of it, you are obligated to give them the cash.
This is the general rule. Movable property acquires other movable property.
Okay, there's actually some arguments in the commentators about this is the general rule part. The Riff and the Roche, two very famous commentators, do not include that in their version of the Mishnah, so you can just put a line through that. But movable property acquires movable property basically is, if I've got a box and you've got a box, it doesn't matter which one of us takes first. Right? That's called barter. My knife for your axe, as long as we both agree, as soon as one of those pieces of property has transferred, the other one is obligated to return. Make sense? Okay, well, we got through that with less pain than I thought. It's not an easy set of ideas to wrap our head around because it's just not the way we think of purchasing in the modern world. But where you think of the main focus of when you think of the main focus of the purchase is the item, not the cash. When your life revolves around the things you need, not the value in your wallet, it makes a little more sense. That it is, I'm taking on into my life this item, and that will obligate me then to giving you its value back. But it's the item that's the focus of what's going on, not the bits of paper or coins. But that's not the way we think about value in the modern world.
This all is based on joint consent. I can't just
Yes.
go up to you and say, I want that goat, here's $50.
Yeah. All of this is when you've had a deal. Literally a full deal of how much for the goat, $50, I'll give you 40, no 45, 43, okay, we agree. All right, let me have that goat, and here's your 43. That whole agreement on value before the taking has to occur. Otherwise, we call that stealing. Good point to reinforce. Any other questions before we move on to Mishnah 2 of chapter 4? Right, flying through.
If the buyer,
How is this so? Right, so
I didn't know what that would mean.
how does all this sort of purchasing thing work? So this is where we get into what I tried to explain before we began so that we could understand.
If the buyer drew the produce away from the seller but did not give over the money, he cannot retract.
Right, once you've got the stuff, you own it now. The buyer owns it, and therefore you have to give the money. You can't say, I changed my mind. However,
if the buyer gave the money but did not draw the produce away from the seller, he can retract.
right, on the other hand, if I give you the $50 for the goat, and then I say, no, I don't need another goat. Give me the money back. Legally, I'm allowed to get the money back because I haven't taken possession of the item yet. However, and this is a great line.
But they said, he that exacted punishment from the generation of the flood and the generation of the dispersion at the time of the Tower of Babel will exact punishment from one who does not keep his word.
Right. God curse you. You went back on the deal. Even for this goat. You even gave me the money. How did you go? Why did you go back? Right? That we don't like that. Legally, the person is within their rights. Right? Legally, the buyer is allowed to renege even after he's given you the cash. He's legally allowed to renege. Morally, ethically, socially, we spit on such people. Because that ruins the whole system of community business. If I can't be guaranteed that when I've been given money, I'm going to be able to actually make the sale and that you can come back and change it, then that creates issues within the community. It's legally true because the Torah is very clear that it is acquiring the object that makes it an acquisition, but it's disruptive if you allow people to renege. So they allow, but they also socially ostracize and castigate and morally say this is a sanction this person and try and really discourage people from acting this way. Now you're looking at me like, well, what's the big deal? All right, so let's move it from one goat right now to I'm going to buy the next 10 goats you have. I'm going to buy them next spring. Here's my 100 silver now, and I'm going to get the 10 goats in 6 months' time. So you sit on the goats, not literally. You hold the goats, and you're looking after them, and you're waiting for the guy to come collect them. And then he shows up, and he says, you know what? I've had a change of heart. I want my money back, and you can keep the goats. Well, I've lost all of the time I could have been to sell these goats. Legally, the guy's right. He doesn't own them yet. He doesn't owe me the money. He can renege. But I'm now kind of at a disadvantage because of what happened. So I'd much rather we didn't do business like that, I would say all the sages. And so even though they can't make it illegal, they can make it socially unacceptable. Important distinction. The rabbis are always very clear about this. When something is within the realm of halakha, but outside the realm of what's acceptable, they will tell you it's halakhically okay, but we don't want people doing it. They never try to pretend that it's halakha. That's the problem here. They're trying to pretend not pretending, they're trying to make clear that it's the behavior that's the problem. And that's an important, to always be clear what's halakha and what is more about how society works, and to know different rules are being used. Make sense? Maybe? Okay, we don't want to curse anyone else for a while, so let's keep going.
And Rabbi Shimon says, he that has the money has the upper hand.
Okay, so Rabbi Shimon, minority opinion, loses this argument, but his argument is whoever has the cash is who can change their mind.
He's a very modern person.
Yes, very modern. Yes.
He's a modern person, right? And I think we can understand the logic of his position, which is, hey, I've got the money. So if you want the money back, we're going to have to talk. But otherwise, just take the goat and go. Or on the other hand, I've got the money and the goat. You know what? I've still got the money. I've changed my mind. Have your goat back. That's Rabbi Shimon's opinion, which makes sense within the structure. By the way, there's an interesting wrinkle in all of this in the modern world, which is called the department store and the supermarket. Right? You're walking through the supermarket, you're walking through the department store. What are you doing?
Taking possession.
You're taking possessions of stuff,
Yeah.
right?
But you can return before paying.
But why? According to the Mishnah, no. Right? According to the Mishnah, as soon as you pick it up, you are obligated. Only Rabbi Shimon says you can put it back. Right? And he loses.
So it's very interesting from where came his opinion, because it goes against the culture of the moment. Okay, from where it came?
From the logic of how transactions feel. Right? The transaction feels like the person with the cash has the authority to make decisions about which way to move the cash. I mean, that is just the way it normally feels. I mean, we all thought when I did my first little diagram, it's just natural. The guy with the money is the guy who's in charge. And once you've given the money to you, you're in charge of the deal now. And when I've still got the money, I'm still in charge of the deal now. So Rabbi Shimon has a lot of logic. By the way, there's a general feeling of dispensation when you're dealing with a shop where the shopkeeper has granted permission for a person to temporarily examine wares. Right? This is shopping, literally. Right? I am examining the slacks. I am not acquiring them. I haven't gotten to the point of making the deal of how much you're going to pay for these. That happens at the register. But then again, at the register, as soon as they hand you that sack of clothes or that sack of food and you take possession, it's yours now. And if you pick up your sack of eggs and you turn around to leave the store and they all fall on the floor, they're your eggs, not the store eggs. But if the eggs fall when you're around shopping, again, not through gross negligence, but just something random happens, that's okay. They're not your eggs. You didn't own them yet. Make sense? Right. But yeah, we got time for 3. So let's go ahead and move on. We're going to introduce this topic. I don't know how far we're going to get tonight. We're going to introduce the topic of ona'ah. Ona'ah literally means oppress, but in this context, it's going to mean defraud or cheat. Not in the sense of an outright lie, but cheat in the sense of pay more or less than something is actually worth. And this is a concept that is not so at home anymore in modern American commerce, right? In modern American commerce, the basic principle is whatever the market will bear. That if people are willing to pay that for that, then that's what it's worth. And if one dummy is willing to pay 10 times what any other person would ever pay, then hey, a sucker born every minute, right? As long as you were honest and you weren't lying about what the object was, right? So you can't pass off the cubic zirconium as a real diamond. But if you say it's a cubic zirconia, they're very rare. Okay, if the person doesn't know any better and you say, yeah, you know, I only have a few of these and I'll let you have this one. It's only, you know, $30,000. And the guy says, well, it sparkles so much. He says, yeah, well, you know, some people even like them better than diamonds. Wow, better than diamonds. Okay. And in most American civil systems, as long as the seller didn't lie, you're out your money. You're not going to get a refund for that. In Judaism, yeah, you are. But exactly whether the sale gets canceled and it's just considered to be a false sale from the start, or whether or not there is an option for compensation to reconcile, that's what we're going to be talking about. And also the window of opportunity to get the price adjustment. By the way, you will notice that some modern department stores and online retailers have begun doing price matching. And that's kind of a way of matching what the Mishnah is talking about here. You know, you bought your TV and then you find that it's on sale, you know, 2 days later for $50 less. A lot of retailers will give you back the $50.
Some of the people weren't here, but earlier Tom was talking about the rabbis in Israel imposing their will or their interpretations
Yes.
on civil society.
This is not part of it.
But in modern day, if in a transaction, would that be this philosophy being reflected in consumer protection laws or anything like that? I'm just
Yes.
trying to.
It's a great question. It informs the process of making law, but it is not used as the law. So people will often look to Jewish sources when coming up with legislation. The courts in Israel, if it doesn't contradict the actual legislation of the Knesset, of the parliament, will often look into Jewish sources when trying to decide their cases. But if you were to go and say, hey, he sold me this cubic zirconia for $30,000 and I just went to another jeweler and he told me it was worth $10, I want my money back or I want the sale canceled. They're not going to say, well, what does the Mishnah say? They're going to look at the regular secular law that governs the land of Israel.
Right, but the development of that regular secular law would have been
less than you think.
Okay.
So the early compromise that was made in the founding of the State of Israel was interpersonal law, divorce, marriage, adoption, conversion, those sorts of things, and ritual law, kashrut, Shabbat issues, things like that. Those would be handled by the rabbinut, and everything else would be handled by the secular authority. And the early days of Israel were exceptionally secular within the mainstream government. So there was a very sharp demarcation of zones. And then there have been fights about those zones ever since, where some people feel that there should be more secular options for the interpersonal issues, and some people feel that there should be more religious authority over the secular issues. And thus do political debates go on forever. One of the ways we know the universe is eternal. All right, so let's deal with the basic idea of fraud.
Fraud is an overcharge of 4 pieces of silver out of 24 pieces of silver, which make up 1/6 of the purchase price.
Which is a sela, which is to say 1/6 of the purchase price. Don't worry about the number of pieces per silver and all of that. It makes the pence and shillings and pounds of England look simple. The system of coinage was just incredibly complicated of how they weighed and measured. I suppose it needed to be because they needed certain institutions of value there because they didn't have the institutions of governance or economy to back it. But the basic principle is,
So if
you're
cheat,
off,
1/6.
they cheat by 1/7 or 10%. Okay,
Mhm.
that's fine.
well, it's
Because here say that the 1/6 of the purchase.
Well-
So they can still cheat. There's an gray area.
yes, there is a buffer. right? Because there's no such thing as the absolute objective true real price.
From where
There is a zone
from where comes 6%? The sixth of the purchase. From where comes
from the
number?
Mishnah.
But why they pick six?
Torah
Why not
Torah
seven?
Sheba Al Peh. This is the oral law. You want a verse? I've never seen a pasuk linked to the precise value of 1/6. It'd be an interesting project to see whether or not someone has come up with a midrashic reason for why 1/6. But that's the term that's
Yeah,
being.
because sometimes there come some numbers that I try to find where, like for example, the Constitution, the 3/5, okay, for
Right.
everybody, and I try to find from where come the 3/5. They say, oh, it's taxes in a British regime or in America, but I never found the sources.
Right.
And here they say, like, I don't believe that numbers came from nothing, from the air. There's something why.
I didn't say they came from nothing. They came from Torah Sheba Al Peh. They came from heaven.
Okay, so why heaven pick 1/6? Okay.
It's not created.
Why did-
Why did
why
to wait to the Eliyahu and Navi?
Yes.
For this
Why
answer?
did heaven say wool and linen don't go together?
Except the
But it's not numbers.
That's not numbers. Spoken like a mathematician.
Yeah, right.
Right? Why was the Mishkan built exactly to those amot, to those cubits?
Right. Yeah.
It's just the numbers we've got. Now, like I said, I would be interested to see if someone wants to do a homework assignment for extra credit, be teacher's pet, better than an apple, and see whether there is anybody who's tried to come up with a midrashic explanation for the 1/6. I'd love to hear it. But I haven't come across that yet myself. I haven't looked very hard, I have to admit. But in the commentaries I've read, no one mentioned specifically why 1/6. Okay, so that's the basic principle. And then time,
Until what time may he that is defrauded retract the sale?
right? How long do you have before it's tough? You're stuck with it.
Right, if you were defrauded, you can figure, you suddenly say so. Until when can you retract?
Statute of limitations.
Until he has time to show his purchase to a merchant or to his kinsman.
Right? So it's you got as much time as you can actually go and talk to somebody who has a reasonable second opinion. Okay, so you go and buy like a classic used car, 1965 Mustang, and you pay, let's say, $15,000 for it. It's in good shape, cherry, and you drive off the lot and you begin thinking, did I really pay the right amount? So you go to an insurance appraiser, you go to a used car, or classic car expert, you ask your buddy Frank, who knows all about used cars, and they all say, man, you got ripped off, that thing's only worth $10,000. Okay, that's fine. On the other hand, you leave it and you wait a month, and then you start thinking, maybe I got ripped off, I should go check, window's closed. All right, you have as much time as it takes for you to go from your purchase to the second opinion. That's it.
Because Ant is able to show the item to a merchant or to his relatives could be 24 hours, could be 1 week, 1 month.
Judging by the next part of the Mishnah, no. Because we're going to have another opinion in the second half of the Mishnah that's going to open the window wide, and the merchants aren't going to be happy. And we'll see how wide it opens. So read the next bit.
Rabbi Tarfon gave instruction in Lud. Fraud is an overcharge of 8 pieces of silver to the seller, a third of the purchase price, and the merchants of Lud celebrated.
It said, woo, right? It's twice as much room for dealing. 30%, and we can manipulate the price, and we can really, and the merchants are ecstatic. However,
And then he said to them, and he may retract any time within a whole day.
and he's got 24 hours to change his mind. Completely. Not just, go see an expert, to retract. And the merchant
They
said,
said to him, leave us as we were, Rabbi Tarfon, and they reverted to the teaching of the sages.
Why? He was in favor of the merchants, 100%.
except for the window of 24 hours.
What for them is too much.
Yes, it's too long.
I was thinking that all for this part that the guy can have days.
No. Oh, well, part of it.
Because that
right,
is a question of what your expectation.
right.
When
So,
I read the first part, I said, well, 24 hours. I was thinking, until I see, if I go to a different city, let's see, like, I live in Galilee, okay, in Galilee,
Yeah.
okay, in Golan. I go to Jerusalem for Shavuot, no, well, for a wedding, okay?
Yeah.
That I
and
can
it's
use
okay.
money.
It's okay. Yeah.
Okay, I go there, I buy, okay, and I see my wife made at me, why is this money, you don't know anything? Say, oh, you are right, I go back, okay? That takes me more than 24 hours.
Okay. So there's a reason why the merchants are unhappy here, and we have the amount, right? The amount, and we have the time, and the time looks similar, but there's a big difference between them, right? So the amount, obviously, the merchants like the 1/3, but the time here is fraud. Check. You only have as much time as it takes to check for fraud, and then there's only a redo of the deal if there is fraud. That's not what Rabbi Tarfon said. Rabbi Tarfon said 24 hours, retract. You can change your mind for no reason in 24 hours. It doesn't matter whether it's more than 1/3 or not.
People like the commuting for the social regalim.
Yeah.
Okay, they are out of the home for a long time. Okay, so and they don't have the opinion of their relatives. Okay, for a long time.
But Rabbi Tarfon doesn't need your opinion's relative.
No, I
Doesn't
know.
need your relative's opinion.
No,
Doesn't need your opinionated
I
relative.
know, but what happened 24 hours when you don't change your mind because you don't see anyone.
For fraud, you still are susceptible. For fraud, you still have the check on you. So if you charge someone overcharged by 33 or 30% or 33% for fraud, if you're more than that,
Also with the Rabbi Tarfon.
if you're more than this, right? So if someone overcharges by 50%, they can still be checked by fraud, and they have as much time as it takes to get a check. But Rabbi Tarfon adds a bonus consumer protection that you can change your mind on any purchase in 24 hours. And the merchants are like, you know what? We'd rather a thinner margin than letting people back out of a deal.
And what happened with the condition of the option during the 24 hours? What happened if they use or
Of
something
course,
happens?
yes.
Can they return and they receive 100%?
No.
Less?
The owner of the object is the owner of the object. So if I buy a suit and I take it and I get it messy working on my car, and I come back and say, you know what, I don't like the color. They according to Rabbi Tarfon, they'd have to take it, but they wouldn't have to give me back the full value of the suit because it's damaged now. And I think we're probably going to stop there because we're going to get into much more about ona'ah, about defrauding and what are the rules of fraud and all of this. It gets intricate. One of the things I just want to point out before we call it a night is that this issue of fraud protection also protects the seller, right? It also protects the merchant. So if some guy comes into an antique store and goes, wow, that silver spoon there was one of the ones made by Paul Revere, and there's like a price tag on it that says $15. You can't just walk out of it paying $15 and go, yeah, I really took advantage of him. Doesn't work like that.
So the rest of the sachets, okay, you can return only if you have they committed fraud of you, or also if you change your mind like Rabbi Tarfon.
No, because remember, that was the first thing we said.
Yes,
Once I take the product, I can't retract.
I know, but only so if they make a fraud on you.
Yes, only a fraud.
Only fraud.
Well, but fraud we're going to see is 1/6, and then there are other definitions of fraud as well. But that's the one we're starting with. Is just the straight up monetary fraud. We'll also deal with fraud of the wrong numbers. Like if I was going to buy a dozen, but they only gave me 11, that kind of thing. But right now, for value is what we're starting with. If they defraud me in the value more than 1/6, or if I underpaid less than 1/6, then the sale has to be reconciled. And we're going to deal in the next few Mishnayot what it means to reconcile the sale in these circumstances. So I don't want to give it away without just teaching it. You got to come back next week. Okay? Okay.